Hey, what's up, everybody? True Boxing here. Thank you for coming back to get hit with the truth. So today, gonna do the a three-part series. This is the first part, and it's about first, is Mayweather the greatest of all time? Is Pacquiao the greatest of all time? And the third part is essentially who's better between the two in terms of their legacy and all that. I'm doing these videos because I'm very tired of seeing Mayweather fans and Pacquiao fans try to knock the other side consistently, making it all one way or the other. There's so many layers to the Mayweather Pacquiao and Mayweather his career and Pacquiao's career that you make it so hard to just do a blanket statement. So I've been fired up about this. Shout out to my boy Emmy Khan running the Boxing Fanatics Facebook page. That's why this is happening, seeing everybody's ridiculous comments on there. And now I'm going to set the record straight and point out facts. My opinions, yes, but facts. And I start with Floyd Mayweather. Is he the greatest of all time? Well, the resounding answer I'm going to give right at the beginning here is no, he's not. Mayweather is an all-time great. Top 10 easily. Top 5 right in that area. Yes, absolutely. But he's not the greatest of all time. The greatest fighter of all time is Muhammad Ali, because people need to understand it's about impact, depending on who's the best fighter. I'll get into that though when I do the Mayweather, who's better, who has a better legacy between Mayweather and Pacquiao. But no, Mayweather is not the greatest of all time, but he is an all-time great fighter. I'm gonna list off pros and cons throughout his illustrious career to prove on both sides. The detractors, but also the guys that support him. And I'm going to start with, first off, why he's not the greatest of all time. I'm sorry, Muhammad Ali to me is the Michael Jordan of boxing. It's almost damn near impossible to top what he's accomplished. And I know there's going to be people, oh, well, Ali had defeats. You're right, he did have defeats. But Ali made some huge history in his day. Plus, the heavyweight division's pretty damn tough to top in terms of when you're talking, all-time stuff. But Ali there's so many huge moments and iconic things throughout his career that make him the greatest of all time. And his career went through 3 different decades, the 60s, the 70s, and into the 80s. He was still, the heavyweight champion. He's a 3-time heavyweight champion. And just different things, make him the greatest. But, Floyd, the thing that hurts him the most, that people need to understand, is Floyd became more of a character than he did anything else. His style in the ring, pretty much since the De La Hoya fight, it became less aggressive, more defensive, and it was great. He still won fights, but he just cared less about how he won the fights. It wasn't about wowing the people, it was just about getting the win. And I'm sorry, but people look at the way you win fights, and of course Mayweather supporters are going to be like, well, it was boxing, it was a sweet science. And you're right, I'm not going to knock anybody that used the sweet science to win fights. Absolutely not. But I will knock the fact that Mayweather had opportunities, especially during that run where he became Money Mayweather. He had multiple opportunities to stop great opponents, and it really people would have looked at his legacy a whole different way. So that was the in-ring stuff right there. And some of the in-ring stuff, some of his performances made you really think that all he cared about was the money. And but it wasn't just the money. Mayweather understood being a character and the showman side and the business side, and you got to give him credit for that. I mean, Mayweather saw that being the bad guy and more people hating you brought in more money. Brock Lesnar in the UFC was going through it during the same time frame, but Mayweather also has the attachments to wrestling, the WWE. He's friends with Vince McMahon and Triple H, the guys who run the WWE. Mayweather went over there at WrestleMania and fought the Big Show in a wrestling or / boxing match, whatever. But he saw, and with Vince McMahon's angle, he saw what that does, and he saw that keeping his goose egg, the O, kept him, people wanting to tune in to see him lose. And that's why Brock Lesnar became so big. Yes, Brock Lesnar is talented as hell, and an animal, a beast, just like his nickname says. But what made him great is the shit talking, the brashness, the arrogance, and people wanting to see him lose. See, there's a lot of people want that, myself included. I bought into the whole 24/7 HBO documentaries up until I think after the Cotto fight. I stopped believing that anybody was going to beat Mayweather after the Cotto fight, because I was like, God damn it, that stupid ass fucking show makes me think that somebody's actually going to knock this guy off. And to Mayweather's credit, there's a couple things I'm going to throw in his favor. One, Mayweather did not handpick opponents, and he did not duck opponents. That is completely false. So anybody that wants to speculate that, you're wrong. Even the Pacquiao fight, that was wrong. Both those guys were wrong. When we get into who was better between Mayweather and Pacquiao, I am going to get into detail why both men were wrong in that fight and why it didn't happen sooner. But he did not duck Pacquiao. That's a false statement. Also, he didn't duck anybody. If you look at after the De La Hoya fight, I mean, he beat De La Hoya, who was still a pound-for-pound fighter at the time. He absolutely was. Knocks out Ricky Hatton, who was top-tier, undefeated, top-tier 140-pounder. He didn't look great when he moved up to welterweight. Granted, I'll give you that one. But he was still undefeated. And that was a huge, huge fight right there. And Mayweather, he did not duck anybody. When he fought Cotto was 154. He was still one of the top dogs there. He's a huge name, People need to really respect and understand Mayweather's resume. And if you get into the last few fights of his career, let's look at the last contract. And I'm going to take out Andre Berto for his 49th win because, he didn't need, but we'll get into that in a minute, actually. Let's look at his last 7 fights here, okay? So you had the 6-fight contract with Showtime, and the first fight was against Robert Guerrero. Now, Robert Guerrero won championships in a couple different weight classes, and he was coming off his career best win, dominating Andre Berto, who was a very credible welterweight at the time. So Robert Guerrero was coming off of, again, his career best win. So how is Mayweather taking light opponents and ducking people? Okay, then the second fight of that contract. Now the Showtime lost money on that deal, so Mayweather signed on to fight Canelo, who was the unified champion at 154 and was undefeated. And outside of Mayweather making him cut weight, which I thought was ridiculous because Mayweather had already fought at 154 against De La Hoya. So I never understood why he made Canelo drop 2 pounds, because I think he would have beat Canelo the same way if they fought at the full 154-pound limit. I guess he wanted some kind of advantage, some kind of angle. He got it. He dominated Canelo nonetheless. It was a shitty scorecard that one guy favored, gave Canelo the fight. Not even close. Fight was totally one-sided. Mayweather won that one easily. Then he took on Marcos Maidana. Now, Maidana was coming off of his career best win. And Maidana was the welterweight champion. He had dominated Adrian Broner, handed Broner his first loss, and he absolutely kicked the shit out of Broner in that fight from start to finish. Mayweather fought Maidana after that. Mayweather, it was a close fight, so the rematch happened. And, you know, Mayweather dominated Maidana again. Outside of getting caught with a hard shot that broke his nose, Mayweather dominated the action in that fight and got a clear-cut victory in a fight that probably was deserving of a rematch. Then we look at, he got the Pacquiao fight after that. That unified 3 of the 4 belts. Those are still the 2 top dogs in the division. He got a clear-cut victory there. Pushed him into the Andre Berto, technically the last real fight of his career. Berto was way past it at that time. So yeah, he handpicked that one and called it a day. I don't like it. It was a real shitty way to make $32 million. He didn't really give a shit about the fans, but nonetheless, he did it, and you know, hey, he did handpick that one. And then the Conor McGregor fight, that was ridiculous. That was total setup to happen exactly the way it happened. And you know, I called that fight from the beginning that Mayweather was going to dominate McGregor. You know, he'd probably let McGregor look decent, and then he was going to dominate him. And the reason basically is that MMA fighters never go 36 minutes in a fight. The max they go is 25, and those are only in title fights. The rest of the time, it's 15 minutes. And how many times does an MMA fight actually go to a decision? Not many. So Conor McGregor, I knew the stamina wasn't going to hold up. Mayweather was going to stop him in the late rounds. That's exactly what happened. And that, to me, was a joke of a fight. But Mayweather, outside of those last 2 fights of his career, absolutely did not handpick opponents. He beat a who's who of fighters in his career, and he absolutely deserves credit for that. But again, we come back to the fact that, you know, why he's not more, you know, accredited with, you know, those victories, even though most of them were clear cut. You know, I mean, they all were. But there was 3 opponents, in my opinion, in that legacy run, in my opinion, that great run of opponents, that I absolutely feel Mayweather could have knocked out. And, you know, if he would have just put his foot on the gas pedal a little more. See, Mayweather's got a great chin. He always has. He only got hurt against Mosley in that fight, and then what did he do? He stood right in front of Mosley, rolled his shoulder, and absolutely picked him apart and fucking dominated him the remainder of that fight. So, you know, and won a one-sided decision in that one. You know, so I felt like if Mayweather would have put his foot on the gas pedal a little bit more in certain fights, we wouldn't have this this notion and this image of him not caring about winning the fight in spectacular fashion or letting the fans down. And, you know, the 3 fights that I'm going to point out, well, it's actually 4, but Robert Guerrero, he could have stopped Robert Guerrero. I know they say he hurt his hand, but I feel like if he would have just jabbed the shit and carved him to death with the left hand, he could have stopped Robert, because he was beating Robert up in that fight pretty handily. The other fights, Juan Manuel Marquez, he put Marquez down in that fight. He was the naturally bigger fighter. I think if he would have just put his foot on the gas pedal a little more, I think he would have stopped Marquez too. And then the last one was, or not the last one, then you had Miguel Cotto. I thought the Cotto fight, you know, I mean, he hurt Cotto in the 12th round. Instead of going toe-to-toe, if he would have been moving in that fight and really just, because he clearly won it, but if he would have been moving more in that fight and setting his punches up better, I absolutely think he would have knocked Cotto out in the late rounds. And then one that some of you Pacquiao fans ain't going to want to hear this, but I think he would have stopped Pacquiao if he would have put his foot on the gas pedal and didn't play so much defense in that fight. A lot of people are going to get mad at me saying that, but I absolutely believe that, and here's why. In the 4th round, Mayweather slipped, and it looked like Pacquiao hurt Mayweather, which he didn't. But it looked that way. And then his dad got on his ass. Mayweather's dad got on his ass in the corner, started yelling at him. Mayweather got pissed off. And in the 5th round, he came out and he fucking dominated Pacquiao. and really was landing good, hard shots. And that was the one clear-cut round where he just absolutely, picked Pacquiao apart. And I felt like if he would have fought that way a little bit more, instead of playing so much defense, that he eventually would have knocked Pacquiao out. And, some people are going to think that's a joke. He probably could have stopped Andre Berto also if he would have just put his foot on the gas pedal. But Mayweather just wanted to get the W, and he didn't want to risk too much to do that. And I'm sorry, that impacts the fans right there. The fans and the boxing historians and the writers and the peers, your peers in boxing, they all universally rank where you are. That's pound for pound, that's everything. And Mayweather is not considered, the majority does not consider Mayweather the greatest whatsoever, no matter what his accolades were. And the reason for that is quite simply because he did not, all he cared about was the W and keeping his O. And instead of, actually going out there, and it's not just about fighting for the fans, it's about legacy. It's about your legacy, and that's what's hurting here. Is Mayweather could have totally said, fuck the fans, like he did plenty of times. And still fought for knockouts the way he did earlier in his career. And again, I'm not saying he should have fought that way every time. Not at all am I saying that. But if he would have just done that a little bit more, especially in a couple of his bigger fights, we'd be looking at Mayweather a whole different way. And people need to understand and respect that. But they talk about protecting the O, and the last thing I'm going to touch on is everybody is in love with Mayweather's undefeated record. That's everybody's thing, 50-0, 50-0. Well, you know what? Mayweather shouldn't be 50-0. And I've seen pretty much all of Mayweather's major fights. And this is going back in the day as Pretty Boy Floyd. I've been watching Mayweather since I was in high school. And I have to say, out of 50 fights, I believe Mayweather won 49 of them, hands down. Let's go. And there's only one fight that I did not give Mayweather the fight, and I thought he absolutely lost, and it wasn't even close. And that was the first fight was with Jose Luis Castillo for the lightweight championship of the world at 135. I watched that fight, and I gave Castillo convincingly 8 rounds. And there's 3 things to look at. You have to score fights based on rounds 1, right? Okay, winning that round, that's how they score the fight. Okay, so I scored the fight for him. Then you got to look at a couple other stats, later on. When you form your opinion, because I am not the judge, I wasn't one of the judges. But when you form your opinion, you have to look at a couple things. One of those things you got to look at is who threw more punches. Castillo threw more punches. And then you got to look at who landed more punches. Castillo landed more punches too. And he dictated the pace. Mayweather absolutely lost that fight. And Mayweather proved to me that he lost that fight. He did it. His actions did it. You want to know why, guys? I'm going to tell you. Mayweather in his entire career, and see if anybody can answer this, he only fought rematches 2 times in his whole career. Marcos Maidana, most people remember. That was a close fight. It was, because of the way Mayweather decided to fight Maidana. But, and he dominated Maidana in a rematch. The only other rematch Mayweather ever took in his whole career with all the money that Mayweather made was against Jose Luis Castillo. Now, if Mayweather was 150% that he won that fight without question, then why would he fight him again? Because everybody else thought he lost that fight hands down, myself included. And that showed me, and you know what? He dominated Castillo in the rematch. That wasn't even close. Absolutely outboxed him, outclassed him, one-sided decision. Absolutely. He won that rematch. So the better fighter, fully focused, was Mayweather at the end of the day. But he should not have that. He should not have that O on his resume, because he absolutely clear-cut lost to Jose Luis Castillo. Castillo was robbed. And I don't like to use that term very much. If the fight's close, or if I don't believe a guy won 7 or more rounds, then, you know, then I say, you know, the fight, it was a robbery. If the fight's not close, I'm saying, and a guy won 7 or more rounds. But if a fight's close and there's tough rounds to score, I'm absolutely on board saying, when people use the word robbery, I'm absolutely on board saying, nope, I don't believe that guy got robbed. I'm the first guy to say that. Well, Jose Luis Castillo got robbed in that fight. And Mayweather proved that there was a robbery, that he needed to leave no doubt about anything when he fought him in a rematch. And he beat him. But he should have that one loss on his resume. And nobody can argue that. That's just a fact. You go back and watch that fight now, and you're going to think Castillo won that fight. And Mayweather fans prove my point every time I bring up that fight. Oh, well, it's not Mayweather's fault. I hear that, or I hear crickets. I don't hear anything. You know, because you cannot argue that. So, all that being said, that is the Mayweather greatest of all time video. Is he the greatest of all time? I answered that question. I say no, but that was Mayweather's career right there. You know, and facts and, you know, positives and negatives to see if he is, you know, of why I feel the way I feel. So, I hope everybody enjoyed this. I'm going to be doing the Pacquiao video next. That'll be the next video I release. All right, guys. True boxing. You've been hit with the truth.